You're welcome back. Time for AM Talk. Now, we have been reading a document, a letter written by the finance minister representing the Ghana government to the MCC regarding a proposal on a December 31 deadline for the establishment of a new power concession agreement. The revelation follows the termination of the concessionaire agreement between Ghana government and PDS, Power Distribution Services Limited. Oh, the proposal of the cancellation of that contract. It hasn't yet been cancelled. But this letter, dated Saturday, October 19, spells out the proposal of government to cancel that agreement and then replace PDS with another concessionaire by the end of December. We're going to talk about it, going to learn more about it, and to help us do that, we're very happy to have in the studio with us the Executive Secretary of COPEC. Of course, I'm talking about Duncan Amwa, and here represent the minority in Parliament, the Honourable Member of Parliament for South Day, and a member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Roxon Nelson Dafiamepo. We'll be joined on the phone this morning by Kojo Poku and Ishmael Ejikumhene, who are both energy analysts. So we'll be hearing from them as well on this matter. But to begin, gentlemen, how nice to see you both. Good morning. Thank you for making the time.
In fact, Kojo, good to see you after the St. Augustine's victory. I think we haven't met since.
We haven't met since, indeed.
So let's remind Ghanaians
yes,
we beat everybody.
Absolutely, yes. And I see that you've represented in some shade of green, as have I.
Exactly.
So, you know, just to clarify that we are the best.
Very well. Just to also state that I've just returned from home from my old school annual congress, Mauli
nice.
School.
Oh, wonderful.
It was over the weekend, beautiful. You know we're semi-finalists, but
well done. Congratulations.
Yes, next year we hope you come to that, so that we beat you.
Beat you.
I think.
But let me use the opportunity to say good morning to my constituents.
Indeed.
The kickbalik perfect customary.
But yes, good luck to Mauli next year.
Yeah,
everybody deserves the privilege of being beaten by St. Augustine's at least once.
Exactly, they do.
Yeah. All right, okay. So PDS, everybody is talking about it, particularly because this letter has come to light, and this is a letter from the finance minister to the MCC. Now, what we know from this letter is that the finance minister actually probably is still in the United States right now. He was there with the executive secretary of the president, Nana Asante-Bediatu, and some other officials to meet with the MCC on this, and I believe it was following these meetings that the letter was issued. But let's begin with this. I mean, we've all read this letter, I'm sure. It's not quite clear to me whether this letter is proposing a way forward to MCC or whether this is simply a documenting of an agreed way forward. Have they agreed these things we're reading in this letter, or are they proposing them to the MCC? How do you both read it? I'll start with you, Duncan.
Kojo, from where we sit, this is Government of Ghana notice to the MCC that it has terminated the PDS deal. What we are also informed is that the MCC took note of this letter somewhere Friday. By Saturday, Ghanaians were already aware, even without government communicating to him. So, in effect, the PDS deal is terminated.
Okay.
What steps government is going to take thereafter to transfer back to ECG in the interim whilst another concessionaire agreement is proceeded, that remains to be seen in the coming days. But clearly, as of this morning, we do not expect to see ECG in operation, PDS in operation. We expect to have our ECG back, and we have called clearly on authorities to ensure that whatever losses that the nation incurred, both material and probably time wastage, we hold certain persons largely accountable, because this is something that shouldn't have even happened in the first place. It's a waste of everybody's time, it's a waste of resources, how much we had to spend as a country flying people out to Qatar and all those places just to verify some of the documents that PDS had presented as a concessionaire partner. So clearly, something untoward has happened. Government has taken steps to rectify that that anomaly, but we would want to see a little more than just a termination, in the face of the fact that when people still yam in this country, they end up in Insawam. So when you have fraudulent activities of such magnitude, it shouldn't go as though it's just business as usual. And one other interesting thing that we take an exceptional note of is the fact that in the said 9-page document, whilst government is taking steps to abrogate or terminate the PDS agreement, government is also announcing that by December 19th to 31st, it is going to go through a restrictive tendering process to appoint a new concessionaire partner to take over ECG. We would want to see some steps taken before entering into another phase of even a search. Kojo, it cannot be left to anybody's wishy-washy that the current leaders, I'm talking of the MEDA executives, who are largely appointees of the state, have all failed us as far as this concessionaire agreement is concerned. If we are going to go into another agreement, maybe the MEDA board should be completely overhauled. And then again, whatever also happened at the Energy Ministry, at the Finance Ministry, we would want to see certain reforms within the next 14 days, so that if government will want to go into another agreement, we are quite certain that it is not going to be business as usual, and Ghanaians are not going to be dribbled or given a raw deal, as this PDS agreement seemed to have given all of us.
And we'll go into a bit more detail about what you expect to see over the next 14 days. But I think first we can clarify a few things. You've mentioned that this letter is in effect a notice of termination of the PDS contract. So as far as you're concerned, the contract is cancelled. I can read something from the letter which perhaps might go to support that. This is under the paragraph that was headed future of the transaction with PDS. Now read two statements under this paragraph. The first one is this: a consideration of the future of the transaction with PDS will have to be made within the compass of what due process requires, as well as what the constraints of time dictate for the government of Ghana to achieve the objects of the compact. Okay, so at the beginning of this chapter headed future of the transaction, they are saying the future will have to be determined based on the agreement, the agreement between MCC and government of Ghana, the compact basically. But then at the end of it, this is where you are probably getting your position from. It says ECG and the government of Ghana have no option but to terminate the LAA, forgive me, and BSA, as well as the GSA, respectively dated 3rd July 2018. But I think it's important to note that the LAA and the BSA, as well as the GSA, these are the guarantees, are they not? That
the agreements.
The agreements.
Those are the agreements.
These are the separate agreements that form the concession agreement.
In fact, the July one happens to be the very recent one after PDS suspension, when ECG now has to go into a certain agreement with them.
That's right.
To still continue operating, although they have been suspended.
So all these are now, well, according to government, they have no option but to terminate them.
All of them.
Even though they say at the beginning that they now have to make a decision about the future based on due process. Mr. Dafiamako, do you see due process here?
Akwajo, thank you. I would have loved if you had read the paragraph of the one that's the paragraph immediately after the one you just read.
The last one that I just read.
So that it will place the discussion.
This the going forward paragraph, is that the one you mean?
Yes.
Where it says going forward.
No. Okay, under the future of the transaction
Okay,
with PDS.
okay. So the
Paragraph 2.
second paragraph on the future.
It is correct to say.
Yes, it is correct to say, I'm quoting,
Yeah.
that a proper interpretation of the relevant provisions of the LAA, and that's Articles 2.6 and 5.11, also applicable to the BSA, will lead to the obvious conclusion that there has been a non-occurrence of the transfer date stipulated under the transaction agreements, and consequently termination of the transaction agreements should follow as a necessary consequence provided under the agreements.
Have you listened to the English the physiology they have employed here? There's been a non-occurrence of the transfer. And this is coming from government. You recall the statement issued by the Honorable Minister for Information, in which statement he categorically stated that the partners or the concessionaire in this matter had perpetrated fraud on the Republic of Ghana. And fraud vitiates all. That's the law. Now, we are aware that PDS used some proceeds from ECG to pay some indebtedness to the car bank.
Yes.
You are aware.
This is stated in this letter.
Exactly. The government is telling us that, as a matter of fact, this whole PDS transaction was void ab initio. It was never effective.
Non-occurrence.
Yeah, non-occurrence of the transfer. No interest has been transferred from between the Republic of Ghana into the hands of PDS, of the assets of ECG.
Yeah.
Material breach. No, as a result of material breach. Now, so under what circumstances did ECG, when government announced that it had indefinitely suspended PDS, under what circumstances did ECG employ the services of PDS to come back to do exactly what government has suspended it from doing, i.e., to bill and to collect revenue, appropriately so determined? And we have left this in the hands of PDS for the past 1 year or more. So, how much revenue are we looking at?
Less than a year. They started this year, didn't they?
No. The ratification in Parliament occurred last year.
Okay.
But they started early this year. That was January.
Well, okay.
January.
So for almost a year. And the other sad thing is that they came to defend this to the hilt in Parliament, even though the minority stated all these loopholes. They insisted there will be some other meetings that will rectify some of these things.
Wait, I want to clarify this.
Yeah.
Are you saying that the minority in Parliament pointed out to government that PDS had not met the conditions precedent?
Exactly.
And therefore should not be given the state assets worth over $3 billion?
4 billion, actually.
4
We
billion.
stated it. We have pointed these things out. We even indicated that some of the partners, the documents available to the minority at the time, some of the partners, some of the entities were established as recently as 2018 with no track record to show.
Which, you mean the entities that form PDS?
Yes. So we knew that this was an arrangement that had been hurriedly done. So, in effect, we were being told that SPVs were being established to establish another SPVs. It doesn't happen so in law. You establish an SPV for a certain purpose. And SPVs are subsidiaries of parent companies. But it's only under this transaction that SPVs are established to establish another SPVs. The whole thing was convoluted, and government's own letter suggests strongly that. So, as for the NDC, we made our point. We've been vindicated, just like we're vindicated in the American Mytilinos deal. We are presently pursuing the Crow Associates matter as well. that one too will come to light. So sometimes when the NDC speaks, or members of the NDC, when we speak, people should stop listening, looking at the person who is speaking, but they should listen to the message.
I want to ask something, and forgive me if it comes across as a challenge, but maybe it is.
No.
At the time these questions were being raised in Parliament, why did the public not hear of it? Why did the public not know at that time, for example, that we're handing over $4 billion of state assets to a company that has not met the conditions precedent? Why did we not know this?
Kojo, we raised it. We even issued press statements. Kojo, I can pull the press statements for you.
I would like you to do that.
We would.
Because it appears to everyone that the PDS matter only became public knowledge when there was a question around the guarantee.
No.
So
we had raised this matter right from the word go.
Kojo, I can confirm that as far back as February, some discussion had been occasioned, and I recall the minority leader asking that the whole deal be abrogated. But again, some of us, even in the energy sector watchers, we didn't have the full set of facts to back it. Okay. So you are right in asking why certain facts were not relayed earlier. But as far as I remember, they had made earlier calls for the PDS agreement to be truncated.
And were these specific reasons given at the time?
We gave.
I think we'll have to go back and...
We
that's
gave,
what I would like to see.
We gave
yes,
the reasons.
Yeah.
To the extent that we're even saying that, how could a company, as part of the core requirements, were supposed to submit a bank guarantee, and they were substituting that with an insurance guarantee. Yeah. And that was also at the time that we had spotted the letter from the finance minister to lawyer Koto Ampao, asking that certain changes be done in terms of the shareholding structure. So we're beginning to question some of these things. We provided some of this information, but like I was saying, oftentimes when the minority speaks, some other persons are minded to wave the things we're raising or the issues we're raising with the wave of the hand. Oh, they are just minority, they're in the opposition, they oppose everything. Some of my colleagues will sit here and say the minority are just opposing everything. But that was not the case.
Okay, so I want to now move to the next level of this conversation, and this is what Mr. Duncan Amwa and COPEC are calling for, that people should be prosecuted for failing to act. And I'm interested in the question of who did wrong. You know, I know it's not fashionable to point fingers, but I think when you want to solve a problem, you have to understand how it happened. So,
Kojo,
yes,
I am one of the first persons who actually made this call. Then I saw Duncan's position. Look, we have to begin to prosecute. All right. Because you see, government commissioned a report into this matter, sent lawyers outside, and they came back with a certain report and making certain recommendations. And now the entire transaction, we have expended money. 30 million is gone somewhere. How are we getting it back?
Okay.
Now, so we need to prosecute. So like it said, persons who go and steal plantain, they go to prison. When they are lucky, they get a fine.
Okay.
And so in this matter, I won't sit here and say conducted into this matter.
Now, I am interested in which Mr. A, B, or C we should be asking questions of. Okay, we don't know whether they'll go to jail or not. The court will decide that.
No,
but
let the inquiry establish.
Indeed.
That.
So I am interested in who we should be asking questions of. Now, when I read the statement from COPEC, my first thought was, okay, where was the fraud here? This fraud that Mr.
that we are asserting,
was mentioning in that statement.
Yeah.
Now, FTI Consulting was the auditor chosen by MIDA to investigate this matter. Yeah. They found a number of things, okay? And I want to read through them quickly because this is where we start to
make the point that this all contain in the unilateral termination letter by government.
Yes, this I'm reading from that letter. FTI makes the following observations and conclusions, among others. I'm quoting the letter. There aren't many. One, based on a review of Section 8 of Al-Quds Delegation of Authority, Al-Nuri, the person who signed it, did not have authority to bind Al-Quds in relation to the demand guarantees. 2, based on a review of Al-Quds underwriting guidelines, Al-Quds would avoid coverage of guarantees and product warranty and quality, I guess for reasons stated in 1. 3, however, as noted in a legal analysis by a Qatari law firm, KNL, of a Cassation Court judgment, the doctrine of apparent authority could apply where an employee submitted a purchase order with company stamps in circumstances where she indicated that she represented her employer. I think the she is being used there to refer to both. 4, the same Qatari law firm indicated that it was difficult to determine whether or not Al-Nuri had apparent or due authority to bind Al-Quds. And finally, there was no information available to FTI to suggest that PDS, Calbank, or Dunwell and or personnel from MEDA committed fraud in relation to the demand guarantees. Okay. Now, so my question is this. My question is this. According to FTI, if there was fraud regarding the demand guarantees, I'm not talking about other things, we have to talk about the money, how it was paid for and all that as a separate matter. But if there was fraud relating to the demand guarantees, it was by somebody called Al-Nuri, who works for Al-Quds. Not for anybody on our side.
Kojo, who contacted Al-Nuri? For whom was Al-Nuri working? Was he operating in abeyance alone? Was he on a sole mandate to do something? Who contracted Al-Nuri?
So let me play devil's advocate.
If you need to go through Al-Quds to secure your insurance guarantee, Al-Quds is a registered and very well known.
Exactly. So let me play devil's advocate.
If you go through the normal standard processes, you would not be using Al-Nuri. That is why we have said.
So let me play devil's advocate.
Okay.
Let's assume that Al-Nuri's role at Al-Quds is to be that customer-facing person, although he doesn't have the power to contract, a guarantee on behalf of his company. Now, let's say Al-Nuri then misrepresented himself.
I'll take you back.
And sign this contract with the Ghanaian representative.
You've done enough devil. You know why you've done enough devil. So Al-Nuri is a front man.
Who now lies to.
Al-Nuri has no locus as far as the Al-Quds structure is concerned to sign that sort of agreement. Al-Nuri signs. Our due diligence didn't point this out.
Even though
you get where we went wrong. So when we say conditions precedent, the fundamentals that should be in place for you to embark on this concessionaire agreement, you overlooked every single red flag. Because if you had done a little due diligence, you would have realized that a bank guarantee is totally different from an insurance guarantee. And there is no way you should waive.
That was agreed.
Wait, Kojo,
wasn't it?
Kojo, wait. Kojo, there is no way.
Not agreed between PDS and ECG that we are not
it
going
is
to
not
do
for
bank
them.
guarantee.
No. It is not
we are
for
going
them
to do insurance guarantee.
Kojo, it is not for them to agree. As a state, we are giving our ECG a $4 billion asset. Our key focus was on the MCC $528 million investment that we're going to get into ECG. Now, because we couldn't hand over ECG to MCC because they had such interest in managing, we needed LPs, local partners. What process did we embark upon to select these local partners? Were they coming on board with that financial muscle to also invest in excess of $500 million? Because if the one investing 500 holds 49%, it means the 51 should invest a lot more. If 51 should invest $500 million and I go selecting a groundnut seller, a peanut person, people I know do not have the financial capacity, then I have goofed right from the outset, because I need a certain capacity, I need a certain level of investment in order that I can hand over ECG to these persons, believing that investment in technology, investment in equipment, investment in manpower, investment in operations generally would trickle down to how effective or efficient ECG becomes. If these persons were coming in with no known capacity and those on the side of government couldn't do any proper diligence, they have let us down. That's why we're calling for prosecutions. Again.
So are you pointing at MEDA?
Yes, Kojo.
Okay.
I would want to see a complete overhaul of the MEDA board. Complete. If we are to go into the next phase of any such concessionaire arrangement. Because those we have in place today have woefully failed Ghanaians. You went to give your $4 billion asset out for an investment of $1 billion. Right?
Or even less.
So in trade terms,
Much less, actually.
Yes, much
no,
less.
it should be, because MCC is bringing about 500. You expect the local partners to also raise another 500.
Okay.
No,
So
530
about
there.
a billion, a billion point one, right? Over your 4 billion. So you came in stronger. You should be sure that those coming in also have that minimum capacity to be able to invest. If these persons had to now rely on ECG's collections, about $11.5 million to now go and pay for a certain insurance guarantee,
Which should have been a condition precedent.
exactly,
Yes.
Kojo, a lot has gone wrong, and
now
the
let me-
prosecutions we are asking for, Honorable, are in two legs.
Yes.
On two legs, we are asking for the front men for the entire PDS arrangement, persons who came up front and said, look, okay, we have $500 to $1 million to invest in ECG over the next 5 years, but knew they didn't
And
have
it
that
turned out that they
capacity.
didn't have it at all.
Those set of persons, we should be able to, follow up with them. And then again, those on the side of government who should have also done a little more work, but sat aloof, were caught ball watching.
Criminal negligence.
We shouldn't also allow them to get away and then to pretend over the next, concessionaire agreement. Once we go back and forth with this and say we have a December 19 deadline to select another local partner, and we are going to use restrictive tendering, Kojo, chances are that we even do much worse than what we have done.
I
with
want us to
PDS.
talk about the way forward in
Yes.
a minute. But
Kojo, there is internal regularity when you are dealing with companies. It's not my business to find out whether or not what multimedia does in respect of you, whether you have mandate to even sit and handle this program. So when there are liabilities, it is not for you to come and say that we didn't ask Kwejo to do that. Once Kwejo has been doing this, and it is known that he's been doing it, I will assume that everything is regular internally, and that is the law. Now, it is not
support my point, rather.
Yes, it's no.
The people on the government side really.
No.
accuse them of
I am only raising this principle in respect of Al-Nuri.
Okay.
Vis-a-vis Al-Quds. Once Al-Nuri came here in the name of Al-Quds, and used Al-Quds documents and all that, did all the negotiations on behalf of Al-Quds, it is not up to Al-Quds now to say that he didn't have the mandate. We will hold them responsible. Internally, they can discipline him. That is one. Two, due diligence is part of such a huge project that's supposed to have been done. And Kojo, why do we say due diligence? It is for you to cross-check everything and ensure that the terms, the material terms of the concession agreement are complied with. If you go and cook any armchair report and call it a due diligence, it is no due diligence. Because you were not diligent alone. You were not diligent, let alone you were due. You were not diligent. And that is why we are holding the public officials who participated in the process, as well as the Ghanaians. Some practically created empty shells and called them companies to participate in this process.
When you say the Ghanaians, you mean the PDS, the
Yes, the
local
local
partners.
the local partners. There are a lot of things wrong in this matter. And so we cannot sit here and wish it away as if it's business as usual. There has to be a thorough investigation into the matter leading to criminal prosecution. Let the courts determine whether or not the people are guilty. The depending on the kind of evidence available, the court it will be admitted, the court will place proprietary value on them and make a determination.
So
but
one thing
there
that
has to be a judicial inquiry into this and determine criminal culpability.
One thing that is
now,
clear. Oh, sorry,
now
I'll let you
going
finish.
forward, government has suggested certain roadmap.
Can we hold on the going
well,
forward? I want us to wrap up on the who we should ask questions of.
Very well.
So it seems everything we've said so far is pointing quite clearly at MIDA.
Yes.
That we should ask them some questions.
Yes.
A lot of questions.
But what about ECG? And I say this because in this letter, I'm reading again from Ken Foyata's own letter.
You see, if you say ECG, say ECG board.
Well,
the board of ECG.
Well, I mean,
yes.
You might want to
yes.
specify that. But in any case, ECG comes up for not very favorable mention here.
No.
Because this is what the finance minister says. And I'm reading from the paragraph that is headed background to the government's decision. And I have to go quite deep into this paragraph to find this part that I'm reading. Okay, here we are. Following failure to receive satisfactory confirmation by IFC and Hutton and Williams, these are two companies that were advisors on the deal, and I see an interesting desire to put some blame on them as well, of whether adequate due diligence has been performed on the validity of the demand guarantees purportedly issued by Alcoot by letter dated 28th February 2019, ECG took the initiative to ascertain from Alcoot itself proof of or confirmation of the due authorization for the execution of the demand guarantees by that firm. ECG also requested Alcoot to confirm compliance with relevant laws and regulations to which the demand guarantees would be subject in relation to the substantial exposure in the total sum of $350 million United States dollars that Alcoot had undertaken in favor of ECG. Now, the next bit is the important one, but before I read it, let me just state, by the time ECG is now seeking all of these guarantees, MIDA has, by your estimation, already done the wrong thing by allowing the bank guarantee to be swapped for an insurance guarantee.
Right? Let me
make the point. Then you can speak to all of it
without actually varying the term to reflect same.
Indeed. So at this point, ECG is seeking to do due diligence on a contract that has had its conditions unlawfully altered.
Yeah.
All right. But we've heard government praise ECG for doing this extra due diligence by their estimation.
In the past.
Yes. But this is the next bit. ECG did not receive the requested confirmation and proof of due authorization from Alcoot by the transfer date. Out of a desire to ensure the occurrence of the transfer, ECG was compelled to confirm acceptance of the form of the demand guarantees with an expectation that upon receipt of satisfactory reply from Alcoot, it will subsequently confirm the demand guarantees in substance and in form. By a letter dated 13 March 2019 forwarded to ECG by MIDA, Alcoot purported to confirm the demand guarantees. So in essence, the finance minister is telling us that ECG, out of a desire to hand over its assets.
Is he speaking for ECG now?
Well, I mean, that is what
is he speaking for
out of
ECG
a desire to hand over its assets to PDS.
Where did he get that explanation from?
Decided that this extra forceful, going the extra mile due diligence that they are doing, they are going to stop.
Even the finance minister should be resigning.
And just hand over the assets to PDS without having confirmed the guarantees.
Kojo, let me help out here. The wrong had been occasioned already. If anybody mentions ECG, they should come up for applause and commendation.
Who, ECG?
Yes.
Should come up for applause.
Yes, and I would explain. It was their extra efforts, after the whole concessionaire agreement had been signed and handed over to PDS.
As it were.
Right? That brought up this whole Alcoot, Al-Nouri, bank guarantee, fraud not being paid for, the proper person to have signed the guarantee or whatever from Al Qut not being the right. It was as a result of ECG's continuous diligence.
But this was after they had handed over the assets.
It wasn't ECG that handed over the assets.
It was government.
It was government. You see, Kojo, wait.
This is what it says. ECG did not
we had a briefing with the government
out
on
of a
this
desire
one.
to ensure. I'm just reading from
I
your
agree,
thing.
but we had a briefing with the government on this one, and that is the position I am espousing now, right? That the government had handed over ECG to PDS, right? But ECG did not go extinct completely. So the ECG board, needing to be very sure that the assets the government had handed over now to PDS was in safe hands, decided to do extra diligence.
I get that point.
What
I'm saying is that happened after this thing I'm talking about.
Exactly, it happened
so
after.
Let's focus on this thing.
Because
if this thing hadn't happened, they wouldn't have needed to do that extra due diligence.
Exactly, and that is why MEDA comes up for the fire.
But this one says, out of a desire to ensure the occurrence of the transfer, ECG was compelled to confirm acceptance of the form of the demand guarantees, even though they haven't yet
let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
What I'm trying to say,
speak of
let me land. What I'm trying to say here. So MEDA, MCC, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy, everybody at the agreement table have agreed to hand over to PDS to manage. ECG has now been handed over completely.
Wait. ECG was doing due diligence. They had not
yet.
It
was after. It was after.
No,
it was after. I can confirm that.
The timeline
I can confirm that.
I read it out. Following failure to receive satisfactory confirmation by IFC and Hudson and Williams whether adequate due diligence has been performed on the validity of the demand guarantees purportedly issued by Al Qut by a letter dated 28 February, ECG took the initiative to ascertain from Al Qut itself proof of confirmation. This is all before the handing over.
It wasn't before. It was after. That I can confirm here on authority. It was after. Thereafter.
ECG also requested Al Qut to confirm compliance with relevant laws, regulations.
After we had handed over to them.
That Al Qut had undertaken. Yes. ECG did not receive the requested confirmation and proof of due authorization from Al Qut by the transfer date.
Yes. Exactly.
So at this point, we are at the transfer date.
No, we have transferred already.
Did not receive the requested confirmation by the transfer date.
Exactly.
Out of
by the transfer date.
So I'm reading the
no.
Out of a desire to ensure the occurrence of the transfer. Listen, out of a desire to ensure the occurrence of the transfer, ECG was compelled to confirm acceptance of the form of the demand guarantees, with an expectation that
the transfer there means
upon
the
receipt
guarantee transfer, not the transfer of ECG to PDS. That had already been occasioned. I can explain.
So they had transferred the assets
of ECG already to
without
PDS.
even getting the demand
yes,
guarantee.
They had gotten an insurance guarantee there. They had transferred ECG now to PDS. Now ECG wanting to be double sure that the said demand guarantee was proper, was thorough, was not fake, did extra, was compelled to do extra diligence, right? And
so
in
out
that
of a desire to ensure the occurrence of the transfer, this is
the demand transfer. The demand transfer, the transfer word is where we are getting it probably jammed up here. The transfer there is a demand transfer, not transfer of ECG to PDS. That had been done already. And I can state this again.
As of
that
this
had been done. As of this timeline, it had been done already. We handed over ECG to PDS somewhere January. ECG now goes back to Al Qut to verify what demand transfers or guarantees had been put in place. And that is when ECG gets told that Al Nouri does not have any locus to sign the said guarantees to execute that one.
On our behalf.
So ECG had a desire to ensure the occurrence of the demand transfer.
Exactly, the demand not the transfer of ECG to PDS.
Why did ECG have a desire to ensure the occurrence of the demand transfer?
It is their assets being handed over to PDS. It's been handed over. Now you brought a certain security. Let's say you brought me a letter of credit. I would want to be sure that what you actually presented, if ECG should go down under, right, from 4 billion asset to, all the asset dissipated in 1 month. Can I recover per this demand, security? So they go back to verify after we have served I mean, PDS or send PDS to that is where the fraud activity, I mean, begins.
Okay.
So what the guys had presented as a bank guarantee or insurance guarantee turned out not to be very authentic, because the persons who have that sort of signature for that sort of arrangement was not Al-Nouri. And so ECG now begins to see
says they don't even offer that service.
Exactly. So
right,
ECG now begins to see where
just before you come in
the
here,
fraud
I
probably.
want to bring in from Mr. Kojo Poku and Ishmael Ejikumhene, who are energy experts. I think at this point we should start now looking forward.
Exactly.
And
I
on the line
wanted to
is
clarify
okay.
one or two.
Okay, I'll give you the
points
opportunity
here.
to do that. But first, let's speak to Mr. Ishmael Ejikumhene. He's an energy analyst. He's been on the phone line for a while. Mr. Ejikumhene, thank you very much for joining us. Interesting goings on. Let me get your general impressions here on the Finance Minister's letter to MCC.
Well, Kojo, good morning. I think it's generally it's something that we were all expecting. I think that the challenge was whether the Americans will accept the termination. Because the government has completely that.
Mr. Ejikumhene, it's not very easy. It's not easy to hear you. I don't know whether you can reposition yourself so we can get a clearer signal.
Well,
much better, much better. Yeah.
Let me pack and say.
Okay, we can hear you better now. So please keep going.
Okay, so I'm saying that I think it's just it was just a matter of time. The government, I believe, had made up its mind by the time it was suspended that what they had detected was sufficient enough for them to spend this. But the key challenge was whether or not they would be able to convince the Americans that terminating was right, and that it was still that the Americans. So, generally, I think it's just a contradiction of what that thing happened when the government doubled.
Right. It's again, we're losing you. I don't know if perhaps it's the speakerphone in your car, but it's very hard to hear you, Mr. Ejikumhene. Let's see if we can reconnect. We can re-establish that connection and hopefully hear Mr. Ejikumhene a bit better. I'm definitely interested in what he has to say about this. Mr. Dafiama.
Now, Kojo, you will see that there's a certain deliberate attempt to use ECG as a generic term. This is referring to the role of the board. And it should be interesting for us to look at the composition of the board and vis-a-vis the personalities involved.
Exactly.
Then you can appreciate the matters better. Now, if the finance minister today says that from a certain desire on the part of ECG, who is the board chair of ECG?
Mr. Kelly Gajopo.
Exactly. So why would Kelly and his other members of the board be desirous of handing over the assets of ECG to an entity, which entity or partnership agreement and composition and all the requirements that we are supposed to have, we're not setting off?
Mr. Duncan Amwa doesn't agree that that is what was happening. He thinks ECG rather exposed the wrong.
No, I speak of the time when the actual signing occurred. You recall that when they signed the agreement, Boache Jaku told us that they were going to meet certain other conditions. That was why the implementation date was pushed from July, when ratification happened in Parliament, to January the next year. And so when the actual handing over, according to the letter, which the letter is now saying that it actually did not happen, PDS issued a statement, if you recall,
yes, I recall,
and assured the public that they were clean, they were all that, and they were coming to ensure efficiency and all.
And they have even made profits for Ghanaian.
You understand? So it is the role of the board.
After taking 10 million to go and pay for the
$11.5 million.
Yes. So it is the role of the board that I will want to look at in this matter. Now, nobody appears to be praising the minority, but I will. It is the persistence of the minority, and I have to agree that, and COPEC, we kept digging into this matter. This matter wanted to die. As of even Saturday, government spokespersons were defending this deal. Apparently, they had no idea what was coming from New York. Government spokespersons on all the political major shows in this country defended the deal. and told us that this was the best thing that ever happened to Ghana, and that the deal had been cleaned up and that it was supposed to proceed, only for us to be shocked in the evening with a 9-page letter from the finance minister. And the inconsistencies in the finance minister's letter, and it worries me. He's now proposing a restrictive tender as a way forward, as part of the procurement processes to use. And a lot of people are suddenly taken aback that you have just been compelled to unilaterally terminate this. We have not even heard from Sean Connery yet. I say Sean Connery. What is his name? The MCC man.
Yeah, the man he met and
yes, Sean something.
Yes,
and you have not even, they haven't replied yet. They haven't given you their side or the position that they hold in the matter. And you are suddenly giving yourself a timeline within which to do ABC.
I think, Honorable, the timeline factor here has more to do with
of the
MCC, the money, the funds, exactly. Right? And Kojo, we have said that if you were to rush to assess 500 million from MCC and get it wrong and jeopardize your 4 billion assets,
Mr. Ken
what is the sense in it? Ken Cross, yes.
Yes.
So Ken Cross.
Then you should be a bit careful, hasten slowly, so that you get your acts right, as opposed to rushing because MCC is offering you a certain half a billion on your 4 billion assets. So if you go get it wrong, your 4 billion now depreciates or devalues to about 1 billion or 2 billion. It means you would have even lost much more than you would have gained from that investment.
All right.
So we need to...
Mr. Jacobin is on the line again. Thank you so much for your patience. I hope we can hear you a bit better now. You were saying?
No. So can you hear me?
Yes, it's much better now.
Okay. I've actually passed.
Thank you.
That's the safest.
Thank you, yes.
Okay. So you had asked me my general views, and I said only a matter of time. We knew that for the government to have actually announced that they were suspending that agreement meant that they wanted to terminate the agreement. But they weren't sure what the Americans' reaction was going to be. So I think all these periods they were using to test the waters to know what the Americans would agree to and what they wouldn't agree to. So for me, I was expecting this outcome.
Right. Now, in the letter, the finance minister talks about the fact that the MCC sent a certain implementation plan following a meeting between the president, Ghana's president, and the CEO of MCC in New York in September. The MCC sent a certain implementation plan and expected Ghana to implement it by the 18th of October. Otherwise, they would receive a de-obligation letter from MCC. In fact, government of Ghana had to then ask for more time until today, Monday 21st, in order to respond. We don't have that implementation letter. We don't have it. According to this, it spelled out principles and action steps to move forward on the Ghana Power Compact. But the finance minister says that they don't think that implementation letter reflects the agreements that the Ghana president made with the MCC boss. Do you see here a certain continued disagreement between MCC and government of Ghana on how to proceed?
Well, exactly. I think it would have been very helpful if we had all seen this implementation plan. But basically, I think it was a roadmap. It's now in December 2019, a roadmap that the government was supposed to commit to sign to it, that we are going to follow this roadmap and make sure that come December 1, 2019, you would have found a private sector player to come and take over that. So, yes, there is still some disagreement, and clearly what probably the president left that meeting thinking is slightly different from what the MCC guys were also thinking. So maybe the clarification there and everybody seeing what this plan is would be helpful. But clearly, I think they are running against time. If they really want to continue with the compact, they need to demonstrate a lot more commitment. Otherwise, like you just read out, this thing will be cancelled. And if they do that, I think it's not just even the 198 million, which is an issue, but the whole Ghana-American relationship that is at stake here that needs to be managed very carefully.
Okay. All right. Now, a few of your messages are coming through. I'll read a few of them in a moment. I'm looking for some that are relevant to this conversation. I haven't seen any yet, but we'll do that in a moment. Mr. Jakumhine, while we have you, we are now moving the conversation towards what the way forward should be. The proposal of government in this letter from the finance minister is that, one, they terminate the contract with PDS. It appears they already have terminated that contract. Two, PDS will be replaced by another concessionaire, and that will be done by the end of December. This is a deadline being set by the government of Ghana from this letter. It doesn't seem like a deadline being imposed on them by MCC. And three, they are going to replace the concessionaire using restrictive tendering. And they say that this is the best way to do it because of the time constraint created by the deadline, which appears to be set by government of Ghana. What's your assessment of this proposal of the way forward by Ghana?
Okay, because you're reading that statement, I got the impression that December deadline is a deadline from the MCC compact.
Well, the MCC compact has a deadline. The MCC compact has a deadline, which is when is it? Next year?
Yes.
Okay, so the private sector.
Okay.
According to the compact, the private sector participation ought to have taken place from March 1, 2019.
Yeah.
So I get the sense that the Americans, that deadline is coming from the Americans.
Okay.
But
okay.
If it's not, then I don't understand why we wouldn't want to push for. I think clearly, if they wouldn't even agree to a 21st October deadline and they were insisting that we sign up by 18th October, it presupposes that it's the Americans who are actually imposing this deadline. But I guess the counter-argument would be that, well, we had more than a year to do international competitive bidding, and we ended up with Miracle. So, I mean, maybe we're better off this time around doing a head hunting and see which utilities will be interested and available to do that. Mind you, we have all these big players and EDF all coming around. For EDF, they pulled out because they didn't like the 51% majority shareholders going to the Ghanaian entity. But if truly that December deadline is ours, then I think we should push it back a bit so that we take our time. But I think I can
clarify. I think I can clarify that you are right. That deadline is from MCC. We must be in a PSP by 31st of December 2019.
Exactly.
Yes.
But clearly, if that's the case, there's no way we can do international competitive bidding.
Okay.
I mean, we can't do that. Even announcing the tender, people receiving, that's not possible. So we must as well tell them that we can't do it if it's going to be by international competitive bidding. But I think for Ghana, the reason why they are trying to play game and play ball isn't so much the 198 million or so. In any case, that money is not like money that has been put is coming for anybody to use for any other thing. They are tied to projects. Okay, so I don't think that's a big issue, but I think the bigger issue is whether you can afford to make the Americans unhappy. And I think that's the reason why they've been trying to be so diplomatic. Otherwise, we shouldn't be pushed into doing anything again in a haste because then we might end up making some more mistakes. But I think that with everybody's eye on this whatever new agreement that is going to take place, everybody, including the members of parliament, should pay a little bit more attention to whatever is going on, not just rubber stamp things and not just take people's word for agreements and things like that. I mean, I don't sometimes understand, and I get a little bit irritated when I hear MPs talking as if they never had the opportunity to have done what they are doing now, way back in 2018 and 2017. So, yes, I think they are being pushed. Their time is not their best friend. But if there's any way they can get the Americans to agree to even a 3-month extension, then I would say let's be a little bit patient and make sure that we don't make another, or we don't bring in the wrong entities or vehicles to.
But let me ask this. I mean, we're trying to be realistic here, and you are right when you say that as for international competitive tender, there's no way we can go through such a process by end of December from now. Is there any way we can do due diligence on any prospective concessionaire? Proper due diligence, what we failed to do for PDS. Can we do it properly between now and December 31st?
I think so. I think if we have to do it, we should be able to do it. I mean, when you say proper due diligence, I think you need to establish whether these people have the financial muscle, and they can demonstrate that by posting that on, assuming you ask them to do it in a month and they do it. In any case, it's the same ECG staff that were transferred to PDS who are doing the work. It's the same people who've been able to, I mean, if you look at their performance over this period, it's quite impressive. So you wonder whether we even needed to do what we did, because the same people who are now able to deliver better results than they used to. And mind you, nobody has put any money. I mean, when the PDS reported they were taking their money out, nobody has put any money in as yet. Okay, so it's the same people who've been able to begin to turn things around. So it's the same in terms of the human resources, it's going to be the same people. I think what they are looking for is a private sector entity who will be able to provide the needed capital, minimum 590 something over a period of 5 years. And so I think they should. Otherwise, I mean, I don't think it's in anybody's interest for them to even push ahead, because if we can't guarantee that, then we must as well keep our own ECG and look for the loan or something like that and see if we can get them to work a little bit better than they have.
Now, the first time around, in addition to companies like EDF that pulled out because they didn't like the terms, there were many others that were disqualified for several reasons. And in the end, we went for PDS, which is a company that, well, some components of it, didn't exist until very recently.
Well, I think it's referred to, okay, PDS, we can talk about PDS because of all the things they said. But Meralco had a track record. And
yes, that's why I said some components of it. Yeah.
We shouldn't forget that they won the bid. I mean, let's say fair and square, because some of them were disqualified, not because, I mean, BXP, there was no way the Americans were going to allow their money to go to the Chinese anyway. So
I get this. What I'm saying is that now that we are going, proposing to go by restrictive tender, is there a big enough pool of qualified companies that with a track record and a financial muscle from which we can do a restrictive tender and get a suitable concessionaire by December 31?
I think we can go back to some of those big boys that we disqualified, not because they were not qualified. Those who said that they are not interested because of the test. I mean, for starters, I'm not too sure any of these big guys will say that we're committing so much and we wouldn't have the majority shareholding.
Right.
I think government needs to probably go down a bit on that and see if, even if it's, I mean, they should be having a majority shareholding if they are going to bring their money, especially knowing very well that we really don't, I mean, there is no indigenous Ghanaian power distribution company that we could easily, it's going to be special purpose people. They're going to also do the same kind of bringing all these people together. So I think going forward, yes, we can't change our laws because the local content thing is something that has come to stay. But let's have a rethink. And I believe anybody they talk to will raise that issue and say probably we can't do 4951. Let's change the shareholding arrangement a bit. But
okay.
I believe they know what they are talking about. Otherwise, you can't go and promise and say December if you don't have some people in mind you think might be interested. But I guess everybody is now watching and nobody is going to countenance any of those mistakes that we made. So I think they're going to be extra careful. And I believe that with all the eyes looking on, we should be able to, especially if we can't do anything about the December 31 deadline. If we could, I would say let's try for another 3 months and say maybe Q1 2020 and take our time a little bit more. But otherwise, I believe Parliament will have to be super vigilant, and all of us, civil society, will have to be. But at the moment, we really can't pull out because we signed for the thing, and they will hold us to signing up to hold this route.
Thanks for that. Stay with us, though. Let's come into the studio and get some thoughts here. And we're still looking at the way forward. Now, how does this all affect the consumer? I mean, you noticed what happened when government announced the suspension of the contract with PDS. We saw that ECG still made PDS continue to provide that end user service. I suppose it wasn't as easy to simply take that service away from PDS, having established. I mean, I wonder what happened to employment contracts and so forth. So I want to ask, how in the meantime, between now and 31st December, when we get a new concessionaire, now that the carpet has been yanked from under the feet of PDS, how does continuity exist for customers? What happens to customers?
Kojo, first of all, before I tackle your question, I want to rebut a position that Mr. Ejekumuhini canvassed here. You see, by the sheer nature of how our parliamentary process works, the minority MPs were only 106. The majority MPs are about 169. So where government decides to push a deal of this nature through, we have no chance. But I am telling you on authority that we criticize key elements of this matter and caution them that if they proceed, they are going to run into problems. So I recall my leader, the minority leader, who always has the final say on the debate from outside. He even advised that they should take the deal back and reconsider it. They refused. In the same way, when they introduced the communication service tax, we cautioned them. We told them that this is an expense tax. So if you are increasing it, the people are going to feel it more. If you recall, we raised issues about Kelni GVG. Kelni GVG has been passed. What is the effect? We spoke about the Oslo Chancery Building Purchase Agreement. What has happened to it? We spoke about the drones agreement. So the minority, we are vigilant. We raise the issues. But I think it is time the media begin to listen to the minority more when we raise the issues than ignoring us because they think that is the minority speaking.
But for you in particular, Mr. Dafe-Ameko, you are also a member of a committee that oversees all of these bills.
Exactly.
So beyond being a member of the minority that would be sounding a word of caution because you think government is going the wrong way, you also have a procedural role as a member of this committee. What was the committee's position on this bill?
This matter went before the Committee on Finance and Energy.
It didn't come.
It didn't come before Constitutional Legal, and that's how Parliament works. But it came to the floor for a debate, and I'm telling you that the Hansard will bear our position out. Now, leaving the generals to the specific, it is shocking that when the government announced that I have suspended PDS indefinitely. The board of ECG decides to now go and recruit PDS to come and do what government has suspended it from doing. So the question you just posed to us, what happens to the consumer? I hope the board is listening, that they will do the needful and kick PDS out from their system. In any case, what have they come to do? They are rather taking revenue from ECG and paying for expenses that they had incurred as a concession. So, or as part of the concession. So the board should take a cue from this morning and kick them out. ECG staffs are already doing the work. Look, this PDS didn't bring one single staff. What they did was they rebranded, gave them some orange-looking jackets, and that's all. They simply came to use our assets to collect our money and took it away. No material change. So it was not necessary from the word go. So the first thing that should reflect is that the bills, persons who will be paying their light bill this morning shouldn't be issued with a PDS receipt. And indeed, if tariff increments were engineered as a result of this so that they can make more markup, they should withdraw it, so that the consumer will have a breather.
You think that's likely to happen?
It should happen. It should.
Mr. Amwa, let's talk about continuity and the consumer experience. According to Mr. Daffy, it ought to be a straightforward matter. The staff of PDS are, well, they were staff of ECG anyway, so it's simply a matter of PDS no longer has this.
They shouldn't have any presence.
ECG, so it would simply be a matter of ECG re-employing all of these individuals in bulk, I guess, to continue doing whatever their existing roles are, right?
You know, Kojo, as far as we are concerned, the bulk of our power distribution or supply to the homes is still being done by ECG. No PDS. We would have been in a difficult position if PDS had done some investments, visible, verifiable investments that you can say these transmitters or transistors or power ends were provided by them, pylons and all of that. And so taking them over will be a difficult thing. We do not know any single investment that they had injected as of today.
But Mr. Jekum Hini says they brought along some efficiency. He says they turned things around.
Kojo, the efficiency we would discuss here
change key personnel
would only be what we consider the public-private, dichotomy. So when an entity is owned by the state, how we handle it. When a private person owns the same entity, look at Vodafone. When it was Ghana Telecom, probably was making losses. Now we offload to a private entity and it starts declaring profit. So it might not be structurally a change that can be quantified materially. But we are seeing maybe some psyche that is a private person. If you are a staff and you mess up, you're going to go home. It doesn't matter.
So we should expect that whatever gains we made under PDS in terms of revenue collection and so forth, we're going to lose them while we are finding a new concessionaire.
You see, Kojo, that leads us to, if you read our statement, some of the propositions we have made. We are saying that if government was mindful to make some capital injections into the operations of ECG, and then also decided to go by performance, audits or agreements with managing directors and a certain level of management.
They should keep them.
Every quarter we're going to audit. How much power are you transmitting? How much losses have you occasioned? How much collections are you bringing in? How much expenditure are you also pushing out? If we could audit them every quarter, Kojo, we may come to even a much greater efficiency with the same ECG. Unfortunately, what happens with most state-owned entities is that you have a lot of political influences where an MD is appointed immediately. We want 100 slots or jobs for some party people or persons affiliated to some higher echelons of power. The moment you push people in there, overheads are going to go up. and those companies will struggle to be profitable. If we decided to treat ECG as solely a business entity, right, whose inputs must be able to at least match output, whose collections must be able to at least offset whatever cost they incur, then ECG may not even need to go under a concession agreement. Unfortunately, the political will may not be there that we stay away from such state entities, and so politicians will continue to influence even employment in there. Procurement, again, is usually overinflated. And if we don't do proper audit to check how much a single probably transistor will cost, and we allow ECG to procure sometimes at 300% more, then Kojo, they will continue to struggle to be efficient. But as we are seeing now, if PDS brought in zilch, zero, right, just by the mere recoloring of ECG logos as PDS, if that was enough to be able to generate 500 million cedis revenue every month, I am quite certain that if governments today, government tomorrow, governments 100 years to come, were to decide that energy everywhere across the world is about numbers, Kojo, I cannot put in 10 and recoup 8. I cannot put in 100 and recoup 60.
90.
Then you are telling people that you are just inefficient, because Kojo, anywhere in the world, like fuel, right? You cannot sell fuel below what it should actually cost. And so if you're selling to recover with a little profit, it is expected that you'll be able to declare some profit at the end of a period. Unfortunately, we are the only country where energy is treated as though it were some political game. That era should stop. So that if ECG is taking power with 100 million USD, you distribute to bulk, customers or consumers, you distribute to homes, to schools and all of that, your collections should at least meet the 100 million, if not more.
Okay.
If you are not out to operate for profits, you should at least be able to break even at some point without posting losses to the state. That way, we don't need a concession, if you ask me.
Made. All right. And I think we have a minute left. I'll give that to you.
Okay. Kojo, in addition to seeking to revamp the operations of ECG, as it were, we should also have at the back of our mind GRICO, because it is GRICO that does the transmission.
Exactly.
And so if we rehabilitate ECG to make it efficient and we leave GRICO out, NVRA and NETCO and WePower will be in problems. So it should be a holistic approach to ensuring that all the entities operating within the public sector of the energy delivery spectrum operates efficiently. Yes. But the NDC, we have a 10 o'clock news conference on this matter regarding the way forward.
It wouldn't have ended without reminding you.
Postponed or something sometime last week.
Last week when we did it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you haven't postponed or cancelled?
No, this one. The letter emerged on Saturday, so we need to.
He says, I commend government for being the whistleblower in relation to the PDS saga and taking a bold step to initiate a termination process. Indeed, we have a government that thinks about protection of national assets. Mr. Ishmael Ejekumhene, who joined us over the phone, I want to thank you as well for your time. I think perhaps it's only fair I give you 30 seconds.
Let me correct this. It wasn't the government that blew the whistle on this.
Well, I mean, that is...
it was the minority and people
that is a caller's opinion.
I know,
his
opinion is wrong.
His view.
No, his opinion is wrong.
Mr. Ejekumhene, very quickly, in 30 seconds, your final thoughts on this and the way forward.
Hello, Kojo.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hello, Kojo.
Yes, Mr. Ejekumhene, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You see, okay, so I think you are about ending the program.
That's right. Yeah.
Let me quickly say, I mean, it is not Anyway, let's end the program. Okay.
I'm very interested in what you have to say. Mr. Jakumhine, please, I think you should speak your mind in the few, in the minute you have left. Yes, please, go ahead and speak your mind, Mr. Jakumhine.
No, but because, you see, it is. I don't want it to become a counter between me and what the opposition.
I think you are entitled to speak your views as an energy analyst. So please go ahead.
Because you see, some of the things that he said, we are in this country. We've seen MPs actually taking government to court on certain deals that they think that weren't in the interest of this country. Okay, so and. I mean, to hear them saying that they came out there and recommended that government should put money in ECG, the PDS agreement, the concession didn't even, it started with them. When we signed the compact, private sector participation was the major component of the compact. So it's all right to make recommendations now and say that after you sign the compact, ratify the agreement. Mind you, the deal there wasn't any problem with the deal until the 51% Ghanaian component was introduced. So I think we need a much bigger time to discuss some of these issues. They can't take any credit.
Okay. Well, I think your point is that you've seen the minority go much further to make their point in other instances, including going to court. So you don't see why that couldn't have happened in this case, right? Okay. Well, Mr. Jakumhine, thank you. Yeah, that's all right. We thank you very much for your time and your contributions as well. We appreciate it. And we thank you both for being with us this morning. That was AM Talk.